was excited to share his promotion. I playfully acted unimpressed until he became furious and left. Hey Reddit, throwaway account because I don't want this associated with my main one. I'm just here to vent, get some helpful ideas, and reflect on what happened between me and my husband Ray. I am 25 and Ray is 24. I've been sitting with this for a few days now, and I feel like I messed up really badly, especially since Ray isn't so quick or eager to forgive me this time. Ray and I have been married for about 2 years, but we've been together since college. We actually met on a dating app, matched, and it turned out we had a lot in common. Things got even better when we found out we went to the same college and lived in the same area. We started dating, and things were absolutely amazing from the start. We've been inseparable ever since. Like any couple, we've had our ups and downs, but we always managed to work things out, until now. If I'm being completely honest, I'll admit that I've never really been the best at expressing how proud I am of him. It's not that I don't love him, or that I don't care about his achievements. I do. I really, really do. But sometimes I downplay things, act unimpressed, or joke around when he shares something big with me, just to mess with him a little. I know that sounds stupid, but it's just been part of our dynamic for a while. I always thought it was harmless. Like, there have been times when he'd be so excited about something, and I'd just act like it was no big deal, thinking it was funny. For example, when he landed a really good job straight out of college, he came home so proud, and instead of jumping up and down with him, I just shrugged and said, "Well, finally, about time, huh?" He laughed it off, but I could tell he was expecting a little more enthusiasm. It's not like I meant anything by it. I thought we both knew it was just playful banter. Looking back now, I realize I might have done it more than I should have. I'd always brush it off with a quick laugh or a sarcastic comment, but maybe he wasn't always laughing on the inside. Ray is an amazing guy, driven, smart, and hardworking. I guess I just didn't show him enough that I truly appreciated all that. Jake has always been ambitious, especially when it comes to his career. He works in finance, and let me tell you, the guy lives and breathes his job. He's the type that's always on top of his work, always striving to be the best, and constantly pushing himself to achieve more. Over the past year, he had his sights set on a big promotion at work. He'd been working tirelessly for it, late nights at the office, early mornings prepping for meetings, and taking on extra projects that weren't even part of his role. He really went above and beyond. I knew how badly he wanted it. I saw the dedication and stress that came with it, and I knew how important this was to him. But here's where I messed up. I guess I never really showed him how much I noticed. I always thought he knew I was proud of him, even if I didn't say it outright. I thought my support was implied, you know? I figured he didn't need me to be constantly cheering him on, because he already knew how I felt. A few days ago, he finally got the news he'd been waiting for. He got the promotion. He came home practically buzzing with excitement, and I could see that he was over the moon. I don't think I've ever seen him that happy, and I knew he couldn't wait to tell me. The way his eyes lit up, the way he rushed through the door to share the news, it was like he was a little kid on Christmas morning. But instead of giving him the reaction he was hoping for, I did what I always do. I acted unimpressed. I know, it sounds awful. It was just a knee-jerk reaction. He was going on about how much it meant to him and how his hard work had finally paid off. And instead of jumping up to celebrate with him, I kind of just rolled my eyes and said something like, "Well, it took you long enough to finally get it." And I even threw in a sarcastic smirk for good measure. I thought we were having one of our usual playful moments, you know, where we joke around and tease each other a little. It's just part of how we've always been. I didn't think twice about it, but the second the words left my mouth, I saw the change in his expression. At first, he looked confused, like he didn't understand why I wasn't more excited for him. Then that confusion quickly turned into hurt. It was like a punch to the gut, seeing that shift in his face. I tried to backpedal, laughing it off and saying I was just kidding, but I could tell it wasn't landing the way I'd hoped. He wasn't laughing anymore. He wasn't even smiling anymore. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. He stood there, silent for a second, and then I saw his frustration start to build. His whole demeanor shifted. He looked at me and asked why I couldn't ever be happy for him, why I always had to downplay things even though he worked his ass off for this. His voice was tight, and I could tell he was getting angry. I didn't even know what to say. I thought it was all just a joke, like every other time, but he kept going. He told me that I never took anything seriously, that every time he tried to tell me something important. I brushed it off like it was no big deal. He started listing off all the times in the past when I'd done this, when he'd come home with good news or a personal accomplishment, and I hadn't reacted the way he expected. He also brought up other incidents where I had undermined his achievements, both in private and in public, and I guess I didn't realize just how much of an impact they had on him until now. One of the biggest examples he mentioned was when he had saved up for months and finally bought himself a new car. This was something he'd wanted for a really long time, and he was incredibly proud of himself for reaching that milestone. He came home so excited, showing me the car and talking about how much it meant to him, how hard he'd worked for it, and how it was proof that all his efforts were paying off. But instead of sharing in his joy, I brushed it off. I told him to cool it down, that it was just a car, and acted like he was making too big a deal out of it. I even made a sarcastic comment about how he was acting like he'd bought a Ferrari or something, even though I knew that wasn't the point. The look on his face when I said that, it was like I had just sucked all the wind out of his sails. But at the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was no big deal, just a passing comment. But now I see that it was the first of many times I made him feel small about something he was proud of. Then there was the time we were out to dinner with some friends, and he was talking about how he had recently received an award at work for excellence in his department. This was something he had worked hard for, and I could tell he was proud of it. All our friends were congratulating him, saying how impressive it was, and instead of joining in, I chimed in with a comment about how everyone in his office was probably competing for it, so it wasn't like he was the only one working hard. I thought I was just making a lighthearted comment, but I could tell immediately that it stung. It was like I was downplaying his achievement in front of everyone and making it seem like it wasn't a big deal. And again, I didn't even realize at the time how much that must have hurt him. He also reminded me of a family gathering we had where we were talking about buying a new house. He had spent months saving up and researching the perfect place for us, and he was really proud of the fact that he was making the down payment for the house. It was a big deal for him. But while he was trying to tell everyone about the process and how much effort he had put into it, I interrupted him and downplayed the whole thing. I made a joke about how, while he might be the one buying the house, I would be the one making sure it actually felt like a home. I completely undermined all the work he had done, and I could see the frustration on his face, but at the time I brushed it off as just another joke. It wasn't just the big moments either. There were smaller, more personal instances that he brought up too, like the time he had spent hours cooking a special dinner for just the two of us. He had tried this new, complicated recipe that he had been practicing for a while, and when he proudly served it, he was clearly looking for some recognition, some validation for the effort he had put in. But instead of telling him how good it was, I took a bite and told him it could use more seasoning and that maybe he should stick to simpler dishes. And the thing is, the food was actually delicious. I just said it to mess with him. I guess I didn't realize that I was cutting him down again and making him feel like all his hard work was for nothing. Then there was my birthday. He had planned this whole surprise and got me a thoughtful gift that was related to a hobby I had mentioned months ago. It was clear that he had put a lot of thought and effort into it, and I could tell he was really excited to see my reaction. But instead of being touched, I complained to everyone else later on about how I had expected something a bit more exciting. Even though secretly, I loved the gift and was moved by how much thought he had put into it, I acted like it wasn't enough. He reminded me of the time when he had lost a significant amount of weight and toned up through months of dedication and hard work. I remember how excited he was to show me his progress. He was smiling with pride over what he had accomplished. He'd been hitting the gym consistently, eating healthier, and pushing himself to meet his goals. When he finally showed me the results, I knew he was waiting for my reaction. I did tell him he looked good, but instead of celebrating his achievement or acknowledging how hard he had worked, I made a comment about how it seemed like he was just trying to impress other people and that he never really needed to change in the first place. I didn't think much of it at the time, but as he brought it up, I realized how dismissive I had been. He had put in so much effort, and instead of validating that or making him feel proud of himself, I made him feel like his motivations were shallow. I can only imagine how deflating that must have been for him, considering how much time and energy he had invested in bettering himself. He also brought up the time he had been volunteering at a local charity for months. He was really passionate about the work, and I could tell it had left a deep impact on him. When he posted about it on social media, sharing how the experience had changed him and how proud he was of the difference he was making, I didn't react the way I should have. I downplayed it, telling him that he was probably only doing it because he needed the clout, and that some people just volunteered to make themselves feel better. I remember thinking at the time that I was just teasing him, but now I see that I completely invalidated something that clearly meant a lot to him. Instead of supporting his growth and passion for giving back, I made it seem like his efforts were insincere. Then there was the time he planned a surprise birthday party for one of his closest friends. He'd spent weeks organizing it, making sure every little detail was perfect. The party went off without a hitch, and everyone, including his friend, was thrilled. But when he told me about all the effort he had put into it, I told him that he had gone overboard, and that we probably would have had more fun if someone else had organized it. I didn't even stop to think about how much time and energy he had spent just to make his friend happy. Instead, I criticized him for doing too much, as if that was a bad thing. Another time he joined a recreational basketball league. He was so excited to have something fun to do outside of work, and he really enjoyed playing with his team. One day they won a big game, and he was absolutely pumped about it. He started telling me how well he had played, and he was really proud of himself for contributing to the win. But when he was excitedly sharing his experience in front of everyone else, I made a comment about how he was making a big deal out of his hobby, and that it wasn't like he was going pro or anything. I didn't even think about how much it meant to him in that moment. I just brushed it off like it was nothing, and completely undermined the joy and pride he had in that achievement. As he listed all these incidents, I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach. I realized that every time he did something he was proud of or that mattered to him, I somehow managed to undercut it. Whether it was with a sarcastic comment, a joke, or just downplaying his achievements, I never gave him the credit or recognition he deserved. What really hit hard was when he told me that he wasn't the only one who had noticed this pattern of behavior. He said that our friends and families had noticed it too. They had asked him in private if there were issues between us, because they had seen how often I downplayed his achievements or made light of things that were clearly important to him. But they never mentioned it to me directly because they didn't want to stir up trouble. The fact that other people had seen what I was doing and I had been completely blind to it made me realize just how much I had been taking him for granted. I hadn't just been hurting him in private. It was something everyone else could see, even if I hadn't noticed it myself. I tried to explain that I didn't mean it like that I was always just messing around and that I was sorry, but he wasn't having it. He was really upset, and his face was getting redder by the minute. He told me how much this promotion meant to him, how he had been working toward it for over a year, sacrificing so much time and energy, and here I was, sitting there like it was nothing. Before I could say anything else, or even apologize properly, he grabbed his keys and headed for the door. He said he needed space and just left. I felt like the biggest idiot in the world. I couldn't believe I'd hurt him like that. I thought I was being playful, but I clearly crossed a line. I tried calling him later that night, but he wouldn't pick up. I texted him, apologizing, telling him that I didn't mean to make him feel like I wasn't proud of him or that his achievement didn't matter. I told him I was happy for him, that I was sorry for messing it all up, but he didn't respond. It's been a few days now and I still haven't heard from him. He's staying at his friend's place, and from what I've gathered, he's still really upset. I've been replaying the whole thing in my head, and I realize just how much I've been undermining him. I've always been a little too casual, too dismissive, when I should have been celebrating his wins with him. Now I don't know what to do. I know I messed up, big time. I know I should have been more supportive, but I don't know if an apology is enough to fix this. I think I really hurt him this time, and I'm scared I've pushed him too far. Update. Hey Reddit. Wow, I didn't expect this much traffic on this post. I thought I'd get a few comments at most, but this has blown up way more than I ever imagined. I've been overwhelmed with responses and DMs, and I haven't been able to reply to everyone yet. I promise I'll try my best to get to all the comments, especially the thoughtful ones. So if I haven't responded to you yet, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to read and learn from everything you've shared, whether it's supportive, critical, or anywhere in between. Unfortunately, this update isn't the one I hoped to give. It's really hard to talk about, but things have escalated in a way I wasn't prepared for. A few days ago, my husband, Ray, came over with some of his friends to pack up his things from our apartment. I was completely blindsided, and we ended up having a massive screaming match. I couldn't believe he was actually leaving. Ray told me he was done with us, and that he would be serving me with divorce papers soon. He said he couldn't stay with someone who constantly undermined and downplayed his achievements anymore. He felt that he had been the one carrying the weight of our relationship, and he was tired of it. He packed up his stuff and left, and to make matters worse, he told me he'd be removing my name from the deed to the house. Apparently, since he was the one who made the down payment and I hadn't contributed financially, I would have to pay him back for my share if I wanted to stay on the property. He said that was the least he could do after everything. He also mentioned that he wanted a divorce, and I would be receiving the papers soon. I'm at a complete loss right now. This all feels so final and heartbreaking, and I'm struggling to wrap my head around everything. I feel like I've messed up beyond repair, and it's all happening so quickly. I know I've been in the wrong for not being supportive, but this feels like it's spiraled out of control faster than I can handle. I've always had this habit of downplaying achievements, and I realize now that it comes from a place of how I grew up. It wasn't fair to Ray, and I see that now, but I genuinely didn't think it would come to this. I want to fix things with him. I don't want a divorce. I'm just so confused and overwhelmed. I don't know how to make this right or how to handle the situation. If anyone has advice on how to address this, or how to begin repairing what's been broken, I'm all ears. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, but I'm lost right now and need help navigating through this mess. Thank you for reading. Update. Hey Reddit. This post has continued to gain much more traffic than I ever expected. And honestly, I'm starting to worry about my husband stumbling upon it on some social media app. But despite my fears, sharing here has been incredibly helpful, so I want to keep doing it. I wish I had a positive update to share, like Ray coming to his senses or realizing he doesn't want a divorce anymore. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Nothing like that has happened. I've reached out to everyone I could think of, our mutual friends, my family, his family, but things are not going as I had hoped. Our mutual friends have decided to stay out of it. It's clear they've picked Ray's side, though they haven't outright said it. My parents are convinced that this whole mess is my fault. They did try to help me by reaching out to Ray, but he wouldn't even listen to them. His family, on the other hand, has never been a fan of how I treated him. They're actually glad that he's finally getting away from me. Work has become a complete disaster for me. I feel like a zombie just going through the motions. My performance has tanked because I can't focus on anything except this mess in my personal life. I don't even know how to move forward. It's been a few weeks since Ray left, and I'm still struggling to come to terms with everything. It all happened so quickly, and I feel lost. I'm really at a loss here. I don't know how to start fixing things or if it's even possible to fix things at this point. I feel like I've hit rock bottom, and I don't know what my next steps should be. If anyone has advice on how to cope with this kind of situation or how to start rebuilding from here, I'd really appreciate it. Update. Hey Reddit, mini update here. I got served. Things are starting to feel a lot more real now. It's like the fog of denial is finally lifting, and I'm faced with the harsh reality of my situation. This isn't a bad dream or some video game scenario. This is my life, and it's unfolding in a way I never wanted. After being served, the gravity of my situation really hit me. I realized I needed to act quickly, or I'd be in serious trouble. With Ray gone, I'm responsible for the rent on my own, and honestly, I'm not sure how I'm going to manage it. He was the one who paid the bills, and now that he's left, I'm scrambling to find a roommate. I've been putting out ads and searching for potential roommates, but so far, I haven't had any luck. I'm trying to stay practical and figure out how to keep things afloat, but I feel completely numb. My parents are still adamant that it's all my fault and that I deserve what's happening. They're the only family I have, and even they're not supportive. It's hard not to feel like I'm facing this alone, with no one to turn to for help. I'm just trying to get through each day, but it's overwhelming. I'm doing my best to stay afloat and find a solution, but it's been incredibly tough. If anyone has advice on how to cope with this kind of financial and emotional strain, I'd really appreciate it. Update. Hey Reddit. It's been a rough few months, which is why I haven't updated in a while, despite everything that's happened. I kept telling myself I'd post an update, but then I'd put it off. Now I feel like I need to share this. It feels so final, like the last thing I need to do to end this horrible nightmare that's been dragging on. First things first, the divorce is finalized. Just like that, it's over. It was pretty cut and dry. He had already gotten my name off the deed, which, damn, I have to say, was pretty heartless and quick. There was no spousal support or alimony. We didn't have any assets to divide. No kids, no debts, and our finances were separated. It was all resolved in a couple of hours at the courthouse. I tried to stay strong, but the moment I got home, it all hit me and I broke down. It's surreal how something that once felt so permanent could end so fast. This is the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. This is the person I thought was my final and last bus stop. Someone that promised to be there for me no matter what. I hate him. I hate how I feel. I hate myself for fucking things up. To make things even more crushing, he's now received another promotion. Just months after our separation, he's thriving, and I'm struggling. I'm still without a roommate, and my parents had to step in to help with the rent. They're obviously getting tired of it, and our relationship is so strained. I'm working hard at my job. I'm pushing for a promotion, but nothing seems to be clicking. I feel like I'm stuck in a rut. It's as if everything is working out for him while I'm left wallowing in my misery. I keep wondering if I'm somehow a jinx or if I did something to deserve this. It's like I'm stuck and miserable and I have to stand by and watch him succeed while I'm barely getting by. I'm just trying to exist at this point, taking it day by day. I know that someday I'll be better, but I just don't know if there's any time soon. Will I ever be able to move on so effortlessly like the way he has?